Let's begin with an uncomfortable truth. It's the kind of truth that, like a shard of a broken mirror, reflects not only the world around you, but also the most hidden corners of your soul. There's something that evokes in you not just fleeting irritation, but an almost physical revulsion, a burning rejection. This could be someone else's brazenness bordering on arrogance, or conversely, a blatant weakness, an inability to stand up for themselves. Perhaps you're infuriated by excessive greed, an insatiable avarice, or a wild, untamed power that seems destructive, chaotic, threatening to establish norms. Or perhaps it's an assertive self-sufficiency, an independence from others' opinions, that witchy wisdom which doesn't fit into conventional frameworks and dares to go against the current. Or paradoxically, you might be deeply unsettled by someone else's sincere, unfiltered joy, which you perceive as childishness or an unseemly eccentricity. Look closely at this feeling. Taste it, because what you so vehemently push away, what causes an internal scream of protest within you, actually lives inside you. This is your inner exile, a part of your soul that you once, perhaps in early childhood, cast out beyond the permissible. You declared it bad, dangerous, shameful, unacceptable. You locked it away in the dungeon of your subconscious, threatening it with oblivion and loneliness, just so it wouldn't disturb the fragile peace of your external self, which was designed to meet others' expectations. And now, decades later, is knocking at your door, manifesting in the guise of the very dragon, witch, or wolf that you so carefully avoid in others and sometimes even in yourself. This is the greatest paradox of the human psyche, its most scandalous secret. What we despise in others is often merely a distorted, exaggerated reflection of our own repressed qualities. The irony of fate, or perhaps its greatest wisdom, is that precisely within this rejection, this painful cry of the soul, lies your extraordinary strength. All the energy you spend on suppression, on the internal struggle with undesirable manifestations, on condemning those who dare to be what you have forbidden yourself to be, could become your fuel, your shield, your sword. It could transform into healthy ambition, into the courage to make mistakes, into the ability to assert your boundaries, into that wild joy you once lost. We've already discussed the shadow, those repressed aspects that form our invisible baggage, heavy and uncomfortable. But why do we so stubbornly reject them? Why do we, like heroes of ancient myths, so fiercely battle our own dragons instead of learning their language, understanding their true nature? After all, each of these monsters, be it the greedy dragon, symbolizing boundless ambition and the ability to accumulate, but also egocentrism and power, or the evil witch, embodying suppressed feminine power, unconventional wisdom that isn't afraid to be different, but also distorted vengefulness, or the treacherous wolf, carrying wild aggression, the instinct for self-preservation and strategic thinking, but also ruthlessness, is merely a distorted, deformed by time and fear, reflection of our own once rejected gifts. These are not vanished entities, not shadows dissolved into oblivion. They are merely energies locked in a dungeon which, finding no other outlet, either manifest destructively from within through uncontrollable fits of rage, bouts of apathy, irrational fears, or are projected onto the external world, coloring it with the hues of our own rejections. We fear our own power, our own wildness, our own capacity for transformation, because we were once taught to be like this is dangerous. To be like this means to be exiled, rejected. And this fear of exile, this primal terror of losing belonging, became a powerful, unconscious survival mechanism, forcing us to cut off entire layers of our personality for the illusion of safety. The cost of this exile is immense. It's not just constant internal tension, but also missed opportunities, an inability to assert your boundaries, chronic self-sabotage, where you subconsciously destroy everything that could take you beyond your accustomed comfort zone. You relinquish your own wholeness, the richness of your inner world, transforming into a one-sided, diminished version of yourself. And the longer the inner exile remains imprisoned, the more it accumulates resentment, the more fiercely it knocks at the doors of your consciousness. But why does this mechanism work so flawlessly, turning potential strength into a source of constant irritation and self-limitation? Why do we so easily succumb to this ancient fear, abandoning ourselves? To understand this, we need to return to the site of the very first crime, to where the first stone was cast at your inner exile, where the first judgment against your true nature was pronounced. The air must have thickened at that very moment when something precious, alive, beating in your chest was wrapped in a shroud of shame. We've discussed how parts of our soul, once free and untamed, were banished beyond consciousness, becoming those very inner exiles who now call to us from the depths of the unconscious. They are not just abstract concepts, but living manifestations of energy that we have learned to see as monsters. Recall how perhaps someone's brazenness caused irrational irritation in you, or someone else's greed seemed sickeningly repulsive, or another person's wild strength felt threatening. These reactions are merely reflections in mirrors, reflecting our own suppressed traits. Now pause, breathe deeply, and allow your mind to drift into the past, into the misty labyrinths of childhood memories. Answer honestly, without judgment, at what exact moment in your life did you first realize that qualities which are in essence foundations for success and fullness of being, ambition, for example, or healthy aggression, the right to make mistakes, even vulnerability, were declared bad, shameful, or dangerous? Imagine you, a child full of sparkling energy, suddenly feel an urge for something great. Perhaps you wanted to be first, strongest, smartest. This was pure, unadulterated ambition, not yet knowing social conventions or moral judgments. But then something happened. Perhaps you heard that don't be greedy when reaching for the last piece of cake, or don't brag when you were proud of your drawing. And so this inner greed, the desire for more, for abundance, for claiming what's yours, begins to be associated with the image of an insatiable dragon, which must be tamed, defeated, or even better, completely destroyed within yourself. For the dragon, as we were taught, is dangerous. It steals, it destroys. Or remember moments when you felt a surge of healthy, righteous anger. Perhaps someone unfairly offended you or your friend, and inside rose that primal desire to protect, to assert your boundaries, to roar back. But the world around so often taught otherwise. Don't be angry. Be a good boy/girl. Being angry is ugly. And so your inner wild primal strength, capable of defense and breakthrough, began to take on the features of the gray wolf, cunning, evil, one who hides in the forest and devours the innocent. This wolf, your capacity for aggression, for standing up for yourself, for fighting, was driven deep into the dungeons of the soul, for its manifestations were deemed a threat to your place in the pack. And what about your vulnerability? Moments when you were ready to open up, to trust, to show your weakness, seeking support. How often in response did you receive not empathy, but judgment, ridicule, or even worse, indifference? Don't cry. Be strong. Why are you acting like a girl/boy? As a result, the ability to feel deeply, to be sensitive, to accept your human imperfection was hidden away. It became like that lonely, unconventional wisdom often attributed to the witch living on the outskirts. The witch, with her ability to see what is hidden, to heal and destroy, was declared evil, dangerous, for her power did not fit into conventional frameworks. In each of these narratives, in each exiled quality, lies not just a suppressed trait, but a primal, deep-seated fear. The fear of being rejected, the fear of losing parental love, societal approval, safety. We learn to believe that these bad qualities, ambition, aggression, vulnerability, unconventional wisdom, could deprive us of our place in the sun, push us beyond the circle where love and acceptance reign. And so, with childlike naivety and a desperate need for belonging, we ourselves became the jailers of our inner dragons, wolves, and witches, locking them in the dungeons of our own unconscious. We didn't understand then that by exiling them, we not only deprived ourselves of a powerful source of energy, but also condemned ourselves to eternal inner struggle, to the sabotage of our most cherished desires, to missed opportunities. This exile, this internal rift, has its universal laws and manifests everywhere, from ancient myths to the most modern stories of the human soul. And this is not just a metaphor, but a living dynamic that requires understanding. We've talked about those inner exiles hiding in the depths of our psyche, the ambition of the dragon, the wild strength of the wolf, the unconventional wisdom of the witch, and how the fear of being rejected compelled us to lock away these powerful energies. But what happens to what is exiled? It doesn't disappear. It merely changes form, becoming invisible, but no less real. Imagine an ancient tribe where each member has their role, their gift, but one of them does something the community deems unacceptable, perhaps displays excessive aggression or conversely unacceptable weakness. To preserve integrity and order, the tribe is forced to banish this person. They go into the darkness, into the wild, but their energy, their potential doesn't evaporate. It merely becomes uncontrollable, wild, sometimes dangerous, because it's deprived of context and control. The same applies to our inner qualities. When we exile a part of ourselves, fearing being exiled from our kind of tribe, family, society, circle of friends, that part doesn't die. It retreats into the subconscious, taking on its own, often distorted, life there. And this exile comes at a price. On a psychological level, it manifests as an unpaid bill energy. Every suppressed emotion, every locked away character trait, every unaccepted desire, it's a debt we owe ourselves. This bill constantly grows, accruing interest in the form of internal tension, chronic fatigue, inexplicable fears, or sudden bursts of anger. We spend a colossal amount of vital energy keeping these parts in the psyche's dungeon, maintaining the facade of a proper person. This energy, which could be directed towards creativity, development, and achieving goals, is instead spent on an internal war. Recall Robert Louis Stevenson's strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is not just a Gothic tale, but a poignant metaphor for the shadow's work. Jekyll, striving for an impeccable reputation and the highest moral standards, decides to completely sever all base and unworthy impulses from himself. He creates a separate, chemically induced embodiment for them, Mr. Hyde. The more Jekyll tries to suppress Hyde, the deeper he hides him, the more powerful and uncontrollable this dark alter ego becomes. Hyde is literally a living unpaid bill, the embodiment of exile desires and aggression. He doesn't disappear. He merely waits for his moment to break free and destroy everything Jekyll so carefully built. In the end, Hyde consumes Jekyll, demonstrating that what is suppressed doesn't vanish, but instead gains its own sinister will, demanding recognition and integration, even at the cost of complete annihilation. These unaccepted, rejected facets of ourself do not disappear without a trace. On the contrary, they continue to live, but beyond our control, manifesting in the most unexpected forms. Sometimes they appear before us in the guise of those who evoke irrational repulsion, whose traits seem unbearable, like a mirror reflecting our own deeply hidden fears and prohibitions. We've already touched upon how the shadow, this inner exile, takes form in our dreams and myths, becoming a dragon, a wolf, or a witch. But this is only part of its nature. Far more insidious and unbearable is its manifestation in the people we encounter daily, in those traits that cause us irrational aversion and almost physical pain of revulsion. This is not just dislike. It's a mirror reflecting our own deeply suppressed aspect. Imagine a dragon, not one that breathes fire and guards princesses, but its internal psychological equivalent. This is the part of us that craves absolute power, boundless wealth, undivided control. In other people, this shadow manifests as frantic avarice, an insatiable drive to accumulate, be it money, influence, or even knowledge used for domination. We see them and we are shaken by contempt for their ostentatious luxury, their brazenness in achieving goals, their ability to step over others. It seems they are devoid of all morality, and their success evokes a burning mix of envy and disgust. Then comes the wolf, wild, predatory, living by its own laws. In human form, this is the archetype of someone who disregards rules, who acts impulsively, aggressively, who is willing to tear apart any ties for their own gain. These are the ones who violate boundaries, who disregard others' opinions, who seem perpetually hungry for others' attention or resources. Their bestial, untamed energy causes us fear and a desire to distance ourselves, to condemn their uncivilized nature, their immorality. We despise them for their lack of self-control, for their ability to be by themselves without regard for public opinion, which is often our own suppressed desire for freedom from convention. And finally, the witch. She isn't necessarily an old woman with a hooked nose. The witch is the embodiment of cunning manipulation, secret power that operates subtly. These are the ones who weave intrigues, who use words like poison, who revel in others' misfortunes, who destroy from within, disguised as benevolence. Their wisdom seems perverted. Their advice traps, their care, a form of control. They evoke irrational hatred in us because their actions undermine our belief in fairness, in openness, in sincerity. This is our own suppressed capacity for cunning, for asserting our interests indirectly, for possessing knowledge that can be dangerous. Allow me to give an example. I knew a woman, let's call her Eleonora. Outwardly, she was the embodiment of virtue, always smiling, helpful, full of advice. But as you got closer, her aura began to suffocate. Eleonora was the witch incarnate. She never spoke directly, but her hints, her half smiles, her accidental remarks possessed destructive power. If someone achieved success, Eleonora would immediately recall a case when that person acted not entirely honestly. If someone was in love, she would immediately remember past partners, skeletons in the closet. She didn't lie directly, but her truth was always distorted, aimed at undermining, at creating chaos. Her favorite trick was to help someone, and then when everything went wrong, throw up her hands and say, "Well, I told you it was risky, but you didn't listen to me." The irrational irritation she caused was almost unbearable. It seemed she fed on others' misfortune, others' insecurity. In her eyes, when she watched someone else's drama, a spark would ignite that I could only describe as schadenfreude. She was a living embodiment of that part of us that wants to control, to manipulate, to be above the fray, using others' weaknesses. And so, when we encounter such figures, these dragons, wolves, and witches, we feel not just dislike, but a deep personal rejection. This happens because they carry the echo of our own suppressed shadow, our improper desires, our dangerous abilities, which we once cast out of ourselves to be accepted. And it is precisely in this rejection, in this irrational hatred, that the key lies to understanding what we have forbidden ourselves, what forces and possibilities we have locked away in the dungeon of the subconscious. We've spoken of the shadows that pursue us from without being merely projections of our inner exiles, of those very monsters that cause irrational repulsion, serving as beacons to forgotten corners of our soul. But what if these very monsters are not a curse, but a distorted blessing? What if their wild, unacceptable form conceals the very power that can transform our lives? It's time to look beyond the veil of fear and see the true nature of these archetypal images. Each of them, the dragon, the wolf, the witch, holds not only shadow, but also light, not only vice, but also a powerful resource from which we have cut ourselves off. The question is simply, what valuable ability or right have we forbidden ourselves by exiling this vice into the shadow? Let's recall the dragon. In its insatiable greed, in its boundless avarice, we see only a destructive force capable of consuming everything in its path. It seems to us that to be like it means to become a monster, devoid of empathy. But what if this greed is merely a hypertrophied manifestation of a healthy desire to possess, to create, to accumulate? The dragon is not only a miser, it is a guardian of untold treasures, a symbol of power and abundance. It is the embodiment of ambition, the ability to see a goal and relentlessly pursue it without being distracted by others' opinions and limitations. It is the right to one's own worth, to desire more, to assert oneself in the world, to claim one's rightful place, to lay claim to blessings and resources. By repressing the dragon, we forbid ourselves healthy ambition, the right to wealth, both material and spiritual, the right to protect our possessions and our achievements. We deprive ourselves of the strength to declare our desires, to defend our interests, and to fully realize our potential. Then comes the wolf, its wild, untamed aggression, its readiness to tear apart anyone who trespasses on its territory evokes terror. We were taught to suppress anger, avoid conflict, be agreeable, fearing being labeled a beast. But the wolf is not just destructive rage. It is pure, primal energy of self-preservation, the instinct for survival, the ability to set and defend one's boundaries. It is the right to anger as a signal of violation, to healthy aggression as a tool of self-defense. It is the right to be wild, free from social conventions, to follow one's instincts and not be afraid of being inconvenient to others. By exiling the wolf, we deprive ourselves of the ability to say no, to stand up for our beliefs, to protect ourselves from encroachment, to trust our intuition, and to act decisively when the situation demands it. We forbid ourselves to be strong, unyielding, even if it means confrontation. And finally, the witch. Her cunning, her unconventional wisdom, her ability to influence reality, sometimes through manipulation, frightens with its unpredictability and seeming amorality. We fear her independence, her ability to act outside conventional norms, her deep knowledge of the hidden laws of the world. But the witch is not just cunning. It is intuition, insight, a deep understanding of human nature and hidden motives. It is the ability to see beyond facades, to sense the unsaid, to influence events indirectly. It is the right to one's unique wisdom, to unconventional thinking, to power over one's own life, and to the ability to create one's own reality. By forbidding ourselves the witch, we relinquish our intuition, our ability for strategic thinking, the art of persuasion and influence, the freedom to be ourselves, even if it goes against expectations. We deprive ourselves of wisdom that comes not from books, but from the depths of the subconscious and the ability to transform both ourselves and the world around us. Each of these monsters is merely a mask beneath which lies an invaluable gift. By rejecting them, we don't just suppress undesirable traits. We cut off entire layers of vitally important energy, making ourselves incomplete, vulnerable, and paradoxically less capable of genuine joy and success. The cost of this exile is far higher than it seems at first glance, and it manifests not only in a sense of inner emptiness, but also in concrete, tangible failures that we tend to attribute to external circumstances. We've discussed the shadows that haunt us from outside being merely projections of our inner exiles. These are the monsters that cause irrational repulsion, serving as beacons to the forgotten corners of our soul. But what if these same monsters are not a curse, but a distorted blessing? What if their wild, unacceptable form conceals the very power that can transform our lives? It's time to look beyond the veil of fear and see the true nature of these archetypal images. Each of them, the dragon, the wolf, the witch, holds not only shadow, but also light, not only vice, but also a powerful resource from which we have cut ourselves off. The question is simply, what valuable ability or right have we forbidden ourselves by exiling this vice into the shadow? We've talked about the shadow, about the exiles hiding in the depths of our being, about those parts of ourselves that were rejected, locked away in the dungeon of the unconscious out of fear of being rejected by the world. It's like an unpaid bill that doesn't expire, but accumulates interest, sooner or later demanding payment. payment. The unaccepted shadow doesn't disappear. It merely changes form, becoming the invisible conductor of our failures. Let me show you how this happens. Imagine a person who from childhood learned to be ambitious means to be greedy, to be a dragon. They suppressed any desire for abundance, for power, for deserved recognition. What happens? They might be a brilliant inventor, artist, or manager, but their projects never reach completion. They don't know how to assert their value, are unable to ask for fair compensation. Fear success like fire, lest that dragon essence should somehow show itself. Their talent suffocates in the shadow of their own. Modesty and opportunities slip through their fingers, leaving only the bitterness of what was missed. This is not just failure. It's self-sabotage caused by an internal conflict between true potential and an imposed fear of being bad. Or take another. They fear being like the gray wolf, aggressive, selfish, one who puts themselves above others. They learn to be agreeable, compliant, always ready to yield. But what happens when their personal boundaries are constantly violated? They cannot say no to colleagues who dump their work on them. They are unable to stand their ground in an argument. Even if they are absolutely right, they allow themselves to be manipulated just to avoid conflict and not show their wolfish fangs. As a result, their energy is depleted, their opinion is not respected, and they become a victim of others' ambitions, experiencing a chronic sense of injustice and powerlessness. Their life turns into a series of compromises where they always lose. And what about the witch? What if your intuition, unconventional thinking, and ability to trust your inner voice are suppressed out of fear of being considered irrational or abnormal? You will make decisions based solely on logic, on others' advice, on accepted norms, ignoring powerful premonitions and unique insights that could lead to a breakthrough. You will follow the beaten path, even if it leads to a dead end, just to avoid deviating and being strange. As a result, you lose connection with your true wisdom, miss unique opportunities, and your life becomes predictable and devoid of genuine magic. You are like someone walking by a map made by someone else when you have your own compass. How does your fear of being like these demons, the greedy dragon, the ruthless wolf, the mad witch, force you to make unfavorable decisions? Very simply, it forces you to act in opposition. You don't strive for success so as not to be greedy. You don't assert yourself so as not to be aggressive. You don't trust intuition so as not to be irrational. You sacrifice your true self, your well-being, your potential to conform to others' ideas of good. You choose a path of limitation, not expansion, out of fear of your own power. Many of you might object, but greed, aggression, irrationality, these are truly bad qualities. Why would I integrate them? I don't want to become like that. And this is a completely natural fear. But here lies a key misconception. Integrating the shadow is not giving yourself permission to be greedy, aggressive, or irrational. It is the awareness and acceptance that behind these ugly masks lie vitally important energies. Healthy ambition, the ability for self-protection, deep intuition is about regaining control over these energies, which in their suppressed state manifest destructively and transforming them into constructive power. The dragon is not greed, but the ability to create and sustain abundance. The wolf is not unprovoked aggression, but the ability to set boundaries and protect oneself. The witch is not madness, but the gift of insight and wisdom that transcends the ordinary. When you accept them, you don't become a monster, you become whole. You cease to be a puppet pulled by the strings of fear and reclaim your authentic sovereign will. Yet this is merely one side of the coin, a shadow cast by fear itself. There exists another equally insidious projection where we surrender our power not to what we fear, but to what we admire, thereby diminishing the radiance of our own light. We have previously explored the depths where our exiled qualities reside, that very assertiveness that sometimes seems off-putting, or the untamed greed that at other times could be a powerful driving force. We spoke of dragons guarding not only treasures, but also our suppressed ambitions, of wolves whose wildness reflects our fear of our own strength, of witches whose wisdom seemed dangerous and whose influence undesirable. All these are facets of the shadow, presenting their unappealing side, demanding integration so that we do not fall under their sway, but achieve wholeness. But what if the shadow is not only what we reject out of fear or shame? What if it conceals something else, equally potent yet far more alluring? Imagine that in the bottomless wells of your psyche lies not only what you consider bad, but also what you have declared too good for yourself. It is what you reverently observe in others, admire, and even worship, but never dare to embody yourself. This is the golden shadow, a treasury of your unrealized talents, unexpressed abilities, and unrevealed greatness. It's a paradox. We are just as eager to project our brightest gifts onto others as we are our darkest vices. We see charisma in an orator, and instead of recognizing our own potential for persuasion, we say, oh, he's a born leader and I'm not. We admire an artist's ability to see the world differently and whisper to ourselves, I could never achieve such mastery. And we bow before a mentor's wisdom, failing to notice how the answers to the most complex questions lie dormant within us. In that moment, when we place another on a pedestal, we are not merely expressing admiration. We are performing an act of self-renunciation. We voluntarily gift them our own golden qualities, depriving ourselves of the opportunity to manifest them. This projection, cloaked in admiration, is in fact the most subtle form of self-sabotage. It drains you, turning you into a passive spectator of your own life. You become a collector of others' achievements, not a creator of your own. Every compliment directed at someone else's genius might be an unspoken acknowledgement of your own. Every I can't do that is an echo of I won't allow myself to do that. Allow yourself to breathe deeply and ask a question that might be the key to your golden shadow. Who is your idol or object of admiration in the field that so captivates you? Be it art, science, leadership, or simply the ability to live life with incredible ease and joy. Which of your own talents and unrealized abilities have you given away to them? Look closely at them. In each of these qualities that you see in another, a spark of what already exists within you flickers, awaiting its awakening. And as long as these sparks remain merely reflections in others' eyes, your inner power remains scattered. True wholeness is impossible without bringing these energies home. This doesn't mean you will become an exact copy of your idol. It means you will discover your unique form of that same gift. For bringing all fragments of yourself together, both dark and golden, is the path to true power. And this process requires not only self-analysis, but also decisive action. We have spoken of the heavy burden, the invisible chain that binds the soul when its fragments, shadows, and golden reflections are scattered across the world, projected onto the faces of strangers and loved ones. This is the burden of an unpaid debt that drains energy, turning potential into self-sabotage, and the yearning for light into agonizing self-renunciation. But the time has come to cast off these shackles. It's time to realize that true strength lies not in purifying the dark or in elevating the light to an unattainable ideal, but in alchemy, in the ability to transform the lead of rejection into the gold of wholeness. The new philosophy I offer you is not about becoming good or flawless. It's about becoming whole, to reclaim every splinter, every fragmented piece of your own soul, be it the roaring dragon of ambition, the predatory wolf of self-protection, the cunning witch of intuition, or the radiant yet unattainable golden shadow of your unrealized genius. All your strength, all your true power is contained within these seemingly contradictory elements. They are not enemies, but parts of a single, complex, magnificent being, yourself. How then do we perform this act of reclamation? How do we gather the scattered parts and integrate them into our living, pulsating center? I propose a simple yet profound exercise that I call the soul mirror. Find a moment of quiet when the world around you stills and your inner voice becomes clearer. Recall a person or even an abstract quality that evokes a particularly strong reaction in you. This could be irrational irritation, anger, envy, or conversely intense admiration, almost deification. Begin with the trait that causes repulsion. Let it be someone's blatant greed, aggressive assertiveness, or manipulative cunning. Look within yourself. Ask, where does this greed, this aggression, this cunning live within me? When have I suppressed it? When has it manifested in my life, even in a hidden, distorted form? Perhaps your greed is suppressed ambition that you are afraid to express. Your aggression is an inability to assert your boundaries. Your cunning is an undeveloped, deep intuition that could have become wisdom, but instead became a fear of being deceived or a desire to manipulate. Now move to the golden shadow. Recall a person whose brilliance, talent, confidence, or charisma deeply impresses you, causing a feeling of your own inadequacy or unfulfilled potential. Ask, where does this talent, this confidence, this charisma live within me? What part of my potential am I projecting onto this person, refusing to acknowledge it as my own? Perhaps it is your own dormant capacity for creativity, leadership, or deep empathy that you are afraid to awaken. The soul mirror practice does not demand judgment. It demands honesty and self-compassion. Imagine these projected qualities, whether the dragon, wolf, witch, or the shining phoenix of unrealized potential, slowly returning to you, not as monsters, but as pure, raw energy. Allow the dragon's fire to become the flame of your passion and purpose. Let the wolf teach you to protect your boundaries with dignity, not rage. Allow the witch to unleash your intuition and ability to see the hidden, transforming cunning into wisdom, and let the light of the golden shadow fill you, awakening your true, radiant potential. This is not a one-time act, but a continuous process. Each time you encounter a strong reaction to another person, it is an invitation to look into your own mirror. With each fragment returned, you become more whole, stronger, more authentic. You cease to be a puppet of your unconscious projections and become the master of your destiny. For by walking this path of personal integration, we begin to see that shadows extend not only into the depths of our soul, but across the entire tapestry of existence, woven into the very fabric of reality, into the grand narratives that shape our world.